Welcome to Hustle Estate from good old New Jersey and Detroit, Michigan. I'm one of your hosts, Isaac Gilman.
And I'm your other host, Ed Hendrickson.
Week 10. The weeks are starting to blend together. I like to start off with week 10 because that's how we've been starting off every week so far, and that just like that reminds me that we are moving forward, but it's still another week in the COVID life.
It's crazy, yeah, because Anne's dad was like, it's I guess he's at week 9 at the end of the week, he's saying. So I don't know where he's counting his from or how he's starting his number. Probably because I think that's when he stopped working. So we're doing it based off kind of when you weren't able in the office. We both have this agreed moment, but I think he worked one more week in the office. Even hearing that tonight, I was just like, oh my God, like, dude, this sucks, man. Like, I'm not going to lie.
So things are starting to, so this is the first week I felt that, I mean, things will never go back to like how it was. It's just, I mean, it'll be 10 years before it happens. Like if you think about how 9/11, there are airport security things that are still in place from 9/11, right? Like, and we've all adapted to it at this point. So it'll never go back to normal. I think this is the first week I felt or observed that things are starting to normalize a little bit. So like not just with the states and stuff, because like parts of Michigan are quote unquote reopening a bit. Right. North, I forget where it is, what the boundary is, but like northern Michigan is starting to reopen in certain places. Like you can go to a restaurant. It can't be full capacity, it has to be half capacity, but you can go. I read airlines are starting to have their like bookings are starting to outpace their cancellations, which still doesn't mean a lot of people are booking. It just means that like the wave of cancellations might be slowing, and then
we're still like 1950s level though. I read. I think I saw the same kind of thing, which is still good news, like you said. At least it's tipping the scale. It's an important thing to note.
I also think like it takes time to build habits. Recently in our boot camp, they talked about habit building, and like I think a lot of people think a habit can be built in a few weeks, but the reality is it takes 2 months roughly. I think they've cited a study that says 66 days, but the reality is like if you do something for a month, there's a good chance you can continue doing that for the rest of your life. But if you get thrown off of that habit within the next month or so, it's a good chance you could revert back or not, get rid of that habit altogether. So I think if you do something for 2 months straight, there's a good chance that you will continue to do that and then kind of build it into your lifestyle. I think that's kind of where we're at right now. 10 weeks, right, is about a little over 2 months. I definitely don't miss my commute. I definitely don't miss going into the office that much because I can talk to everybody remotely. There are some things that I'm like beginning to be like, this is okay. I can do this for a while.
You seem pretty excited. Yeah. I mean, I could tell. I mean, those that are listening to us here don't see the smile on your face that I'm able to see.
I definitely would like childcare to kind of come back, but at the same time, I have enjoyed spending more time with my daughter. It's harder for Kayla than it is for me, but and every day is a little different. But at least like a good chunk of our day is not spent, commuting her.
Right.
Or like handing her off to somebody else. She's literally in our house 24/7. If anything, I feel like she's going to go stir crazy if she's like 4 years old, and this, like Kevin, for instance.
Right. I was going to say, there's so many things you can go off this. Like, is this really good for her? Like, yes, I know you're happy that you're home and you don't have to take her.
Right.
But is that good for her?
For a 1-year-old, maybe. But like, yeah, I see your point. I think at least there is probably that age of like 3 to 12 right now. That's like stir crazy hardcore. After 12, right, you can kind of entertain yourself. And definitely by the time you're a teenager, like I see teenagers walking around here all the time. Like, your parents aren't going to stop you.
But I don't know if you agree. I mean, I look at it as, and we'll just say this first, humans are social animals. So to put us inside, whether it's whatever age you want to call it, is it 3 years old? Is it a year old? Is it 12 years old? Is it 20 years old or 60, 80, whatever? Now, I used to definitely consider myself an introvert, at least, right? A homebody in some sense. I mean, I like to be home. I mean, as much as I can be outgoing, I generally enjoy the comforts of being home. What bothers me a little bit is it's almost like the thought that I can't go out. It's like do I always go get a cup of coffee? No, but I want to go get a cup of coffee and not be fucking judged that the fact that I went, or I have to worry like, does Ann think it's a good idea? Or like, now I'm at Ann's parents' house. Like, are they going to be okay with, like, what happened to, like, I could just be like, go and get a cup of coffee, be back. Like, I understand what's going on in the world, but it's stuff like that I miss. It's stuff that is just like, hey, let's go to the grocery store real quick, or like, I'm gonna get my car washed. You can't go to a car wash. I mean, haircuts, like, you need a freaking haircut. Like, what are we, what are we gonna, like, those are the things that I miss. It's fine, like, fine, takeout and this and that. It's like that normalcy of life. And something else I wanted to touch on that you were talking about, habit building. It amazed me that when we first got here with Ann's parents, her dad came over, we give each other a fist pump. It's usually the way we introduce ourselves. And then it was like, when I hugged her mom, it was like a very awkward hug, because from a standpoint of I think we both felt like this is weird. Like, we're not, like, we've for the past 2 months here, the past 10 weeks, 9 weeks, we have, all we've heard is 6 feet, shake, like, don't shake hands, don't do anything, hit the doorknob with your, the back of your hand, whatever, right? So now it's like, this is the first time I've, like, come close to another human that's not my wife, and, like, we're hugging first. I'm telling you, it was the weirdest thing ever. And, like, I brought it up to Anna. I was like, did you feel it all weird, like, hugging your parents? And she was like, yeah, a little. And, like, she asked her mom, and she was like, yeah, I know, it was a little awkward, just because you, like, in reality, you shouldn't be doing it, even though, we all chose and we were comfortable with what we did. But, like, you shouldn't be going down and hugging somebody or high-fiving somebody, or, like, that's not what we're supposed to be doing right now. Or at least that's what they're recommending we don't do.
Right. And I mean, I feel you. Like, you're right. It's interesting. Some things, like, have become easier. So if we look at real estate space, I know we've talked a little bit about the appraisal space because I work in it. Some appraisals have become easier to do because of this. Others appraisals probably have become harder to do, like getting a haircut, for instance, right? I can't just go to someone's home without thinking twice about it. I now have to go to someone's home and think about, what am I touching? Am I wearing gloves? Do I have you know what I mean? And so, to get a coffee, to go get a haircut, all those types of things have become extra difficult. To buy toilet paper. Has been extra difficult. But the reality is, some things have not become any more difficult. To go grocery shopping hasn't actually, I don't think, has become more difficult. It's become a little bit more, I've become more aware when I'm at the grocery store, but I've gone to the grocery store only a handful of times because I order a lot online now. But Kayla's gone and she's like, no, it's not any extra busy than normal.
But do you feel like when you're in the store, like, it's not even that about it being busier. Like, it does seem like all the pandemic and fear wave of going to a grocery store is kind of chilled out. But do you feel like when you go to the store, it's like, it's kind of dirty, like it's a dirty thing, like there's this virus, we're not supposed to go near each other, you're going down the aisle, you have to, like, move out, like, it's stuff like that.
Like, I mean, my perspective on all of that is, like, the fear of getting the virus. See, like, a lot of this issue, a lot of the, like, I don't know, call them political issues or whatever, the controversial issues, is, to me, is not about getting the virus. It's just about finding ways to reduce the load on the system, specifically the medical system.
Right. Well, I heard someone say today 90% of us are going to end up getting it.
I mean, that's to me, that makes sense. Like, I'm not necessarily worried about getting it, although it doesn't sound like I want to get it. And for all I know, I already got it and I'm asymptomatic, or had very few symptoms. Like, but I think that, like, if you truly leave your house, you risk getting it, and that's the reality, right? Whether it's the grocery store, whether it's the gas station. I think going to the office nowadays, at least, like, when I think about my office, might be less risky than going to the grocery store. And honestly, because there's just so few people going to the office nowadays, and they have crazy sanitation policy. So Kayla and I went to a furniture store the other day. I don't know why, I don't know how it was open, but they were open. Went to the furniture store. There were 3 people in it, not including sales associates, and there were like 3 sales associates. So let's call it 10 people in the store. Big showroom. Gloves at the front door for you if you wanted them, which I did. Hand sanitizer, masks, but we brought our own. I don't know, like, that didn't bother me. And, like, I'm sitting on cloth, like, I'm wearing gloves, like, I didn't touch my face. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I could breathe it in, I guess. But to me, like, we've hit a point now where it's like, all right, it's normalizing in the sense that this is our future for at least the next, let's say, year. because until a vaccine comes out, and they're not going to distribute 350 million vaccines in a day, right? That's how many US people there are, right? By the time, like, I just got a notification that my doctor is like offering tests, but you have to get a physician's referral to get the test. Okay, that took 2 months to do. And now, like, will I actually get a shot to like get a vaccine whenever that comes out and is like actually stable and working well? My guess is it's like a year and a half, 2 years from now.
What's the process to get the shot? And then I also, you're going to need a referral and the other thing too. But I also heard that on the TV that's going to be like, you're going to need a booster shot. So it's just going to be one. And then like, within 6 months, you're going to need another one. So it's going to be like, how do you get 350 million out? Not only will it not happen in a day, right? Like you said, it's going to take time, but then you got to do it 350 million more times for the booster, because they're even saying that whatever they get out first, won't be enough. I mean,
I just don't think there's any reasonable way to prevent death. And I'm not saying to like everybody, we should just reopen everything, but I don't like, right? If we need to truly get groceries, and let's say that's the only thing people are allowed to do, groceries, that's it. You should fill up your gas tank once, and like you should only go to the grocery store once a week. You could easily go to the gas station like 6 weeks to 2 months later, right? Like if you don't drive very far, going to the grocery store alone opens you up. So there's no possible way to prevent the spread, like to a zero, right? You can minimize it. And so my point there is just, even if we restricted as much movement as possible, right, there's still some risk of spread. And I think normalizing is what we will eventually just move to. And I think we are moving to. Like, somebody on my boot camp took a flight the other day and like Skype was like zooming in from the airport. I just think people will begin to get back to the normal paces of what their life was like.
I hope so. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. I think what's interesting, like, and I know I briefly talked about, is like, what is going to change for the good, right? So like, I don't think being scared is a good change, but I do think it's like, okay, we've had time to 2 months. Like, if you think about the restaurant industry, that's probably been impacted the highest, a lot of them have had to rethink their business model. I think that's good. And I'm not saying all restaurants should do this or all restaurants should be like gone because of this, but like, why does a restaurant need 10,000 square feet? Maybe they need 5,000 square feet, and they can supplement the rest of their income through Grubhub or DoorDash or whatever, or they can think about it differently. There's a really cool restaurant that's kind of like acting as like a market / like takeout place in Detroit. Like they're being creative about it, and I think that's really cool.
I know a restaurant that's doing that. They basically go into their supplier, they buy like more asparagus, whatever the same ingredients they use, and then you can buy it from them.
Right. So like restaurants we know yesterday, let's say, or 2 months ago, it's not that they're gone, they're just doing different things. And so then if we think about real estate, it's like, okay, can cities, towns, whatever, flipping homes or like hard money lending, the lending process might not change drastically because it's kind of, I don't know, it's a pretty like tried and true process, but like the home buying process or the home acquisition process could change in various spots, specifically with organizations that, need to receive people, whether it's a recording office, whether it's an appraisal company, whether it's permitting. Like, these are great opportunities to think like, okay, creatively, like, how can I reduce touches? Maybe it's like human to human touches, but reduce like pain points, right? And so like restaurants, they want their customers back. Okay, but they may never get customers back, or at least not in the long term or short term, I should say. So like, be creative about like, how can you continue to provide people with a value add? Because like, at the end of the day, I'm still going to eat, and I'm not going to make all my food.
So I don't disagree with that. And I think that we're both kind of on the same page, and I like your mindset. And I mean, this is talked about, but not too very talked about. Like, people are going to get it. And it's a very high chance everybody's going to get it, or a high percentage of people are going to get it, more than got it. And it is more about keeping that curve somewhat flat during this process as it works through and more people get it until there's a vaccine. Fair. So I kind of wanted to talk about 2 points that I'm thinking of. One is, and they kind of mesh together. So fine, you said restaurants, okay, they can change their model. What about the corner store that technically isn't supposed to be open? Or like, I mean, put Amazon's competitors.
Yeah.
Right. The mom and pop Amazon is not deemed essential, and they are not allowed to be open right now. So they shut them down. And now Amazon, Walmart, Target, who are already the massive companies, are fucking dominating, right?
Yeah.
So the government, and I'm not saying they did it on purpose. I'm not trying to get into anything like that. I mean, they made tough decisions, basically, is really what it is. And whether you agree or not, it's just, it was a tough decision to say Amazon can stay open and they're deemed essential because you're saying you're buying your groceries. So you're sitting here basically like, dude, I'm good. Like, I can go to the grocery store. I'll order out. I'll figure out, like, but what about those stores that now, like, they're never going to be able to reopen again? Like, let's be fair, because I was listening to somebody say, another podcast, they were talking about their father who, I mean, I think the guy who does the podcast like in his 40s, so his father's like in his 70s or something. And he's saying, my dad didn't even know how to use Amazon when this thing started. He was so against it. He was brick and mortar, blah, blah. He goes, now my dad's on Amazon all day. He's just buying shit. Like, he's finally converted into this, like, what everybody else has been doing, but he's never going back to the mom and pop store because he's like, this is amazing. So how do we, those guys can't just get creative, right? I mean, in some sense,
I hear you.
You know, I look at my lending business, and the way I got a lot of business was out meeting people, referrals, networking. I had to be out though. I had to be out and get out in front of people. I have to, like, that's not changing in the real estate space, right? Like, your mortgage broker that you met at a networking event or whatever, like, that's not going to happen for 2 years or so, like you said. So deals will continue to close, and hopefully you have a good referral base that can keep you going. And, you know, once things actually start to pick back up a little bit more, you have your referral base and your core borrowers. But the new way is going to be probably what's been kind of an old way, but nobody was really doing it as much as, do you have a website? How good's your website? Are you paying for some sort of online ads or something to get in front of these people's faces that when they get to their website? So to be fair, like, I'm spending a lot of time on that. Like, I happen to have built my website like 2-3 weeks before this happened. I had it completely redone. So now I've like learned how I paid, full disclosure, I paid somebody to build it. They built it on Wix. It's a great site. I never could have did it myself. If I did it with the time versus dollar value, would never have been worth it. But now I'm learning how, like, I go in and I'm like, oh, I don't really like that. I change things. I'm starting to get comfortable. I'm speaking to people about when I was going to put out an ad and someone went to my site, to someone who I spoke to who does marketing, said, like, dude, your site, like there's like, you got to have like one click, very short information, right? I don't want to fill out a whole application. Like, if you just want to get them on the phone, have them put email or phone. So I went through, and you'll see if you go to the site now, actually, you go to my loan programs, it's like, you just click more information, a thing pops up and it says, like, hey, put your email and phone number, we'll contact you. And then I can reach out. Now I have you on a mailing list.
I think to that point, and I remember like talking to Tom about this, is like, okay, Tom's business has grown now he's pivoted in the sense that he can't make glass. So what he's done instead is he's focused on selling glass. And not that he wasn't focused on selling glass before, but he focused on the way he focused on something he put basically on the back burner in the past, right? He's like, all right, I need a website. Cool. I created one. I need a place for people to buy online. Okay, I did that. But like, he never thought about the SEO. He never thought about like the process to getting someone to actually purchase something online. And he's put a lot of thought and effort into that since, and it seems like it's working out. You know, he obviously needs to build his inventory back at some point, but at the end of the day, that's kind of what I mean is like, now, yes, the mom and pop stores may not have that opportunity to think about things. And that's what I mean about kind of like rethinking things. And to your point about like how the Amazons are taking, the Amazons are taking over and like whatnot. Another huge issue that's coming up, and this is just like my interest, and I follow these types of things. People are going to move back to single occupancy vehicles. People are going to move back to sprawl and not live in dense areas because of the issues of New York City and because of the issues of like public transit, right? And how this could spread in those type of things. And so what that's going to create a ripple effect. And the biggest impact on all that is that cities' tax bases are going to erode. And one of the biggest issues I've heard about city tax bases eroding is because property taxes, right, aren't changing necessarily unless you're defaulting on your home. a lot of city tax bases come from things that are revenue driven by outsiders. So for instance, Detroit, one of their largest general fund revenue streams is the casinos. Nobody's at the casinos for the last 2 months. They have a huge deficit. States that require sales tax on items that tourists purchase are not getting purchased. New Hampshire has a whole like liquor license thing, right? Like people are not going to, well, I don't know about New Hampshire, but like that's an example is like hotels, right? When you go to a hotel, here was a good example. When you go to a hotel, they charge you a tax or a fee for, it may not be described as like being a guest in the city that you don't live in, but that's what essentially it is. You know, it's like 10%, and maybe it costs $10, but you know, that adds up. All those things are gone. And so now all these cities are going to face major issues. And I know like they talked about states declaring bankruptcy and all this stuff, but like to your point about the mom and pop shops that can't pivot or like be creative, like our states, our services that we like rely on, those things are not going to be able to pivot either.
I mean, there's certainly, you know, it's an unfortunate thing, but there's going to be a lot more fault. Like people aren't looking toward that yet, I don't think, on the masses, at least. You know, everybody's looking forward to going back to work. I mean, the answer is in short term, hopefully enough people can get back to work that we can start to really see how the normalization will work while people are working, right? Because we have this thing in our mind, like, oh, things will open, there'll be social distancing. Like we've all been at home. We haven't been able to go out and get creative, right? Like when that new that retail store that I said's going out of business, and let's hope that they had enough cash reserves or whatever, or government support. When they open back up, let's see what they do to be creative, to bring customers in, to hope that stuff like that. I mean, look, no matter what, like you said, I mean, you're talking about less, no matter what. There's going to be less money coming in. You know, even if you can open up when the casinos open up, they're going to open up at 25% capacity or 50% capacity, or even if they open up at 100% capacity, people aren't going to flock to them. They're not going to fill in because of it. So let's just see how what happens with all of that. The unfortunate thing though about airplanes versus a casino, just in this case, I'm thinking is casinos can shift online. I don't know what the regulations are, right? So some of those casinos can potentially, or a government can say, hey, look, like we allow you to have the casino, we'll allow some sort of online, like I can't just like, I mean, teleportation's not here yet, unfortunately. So, you know, an airplane can't just be like, oh yeah, go online and fly online.
Want to wrap it up?
Yep, let's do it. Thank you everybody for listening here today. We really appreciate it. As you know, you can check us out on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and iTunes. If you want to email us at hustleestate1@gmail.com. And on our social media platforms, we're on Twitter and Instagram @hustleestate. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.